Yo, what up? It's Carter, and I'm very excited to be filming this video with you tonight because this is something that I've wanted to share with you ever since I just started the channel a little over a month ago now. And it's on a topic that, and it's really, the whole video is going to be on a topic and about a topic that I've covered in a lot of my previous videos that you might have heard me talk about once or twice, which is called release work, letting go. All right, and this video is going to be all about how to actually do release work and letting go. What is it? How does it affect your life? How can you actually start to practice it and apply it to your life? And we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of it in this video today. And I'm going to provide you with everything you need to know about it so that you can do it effectively. And I'm going to provide you with several ways to actually go about doing it yourself. Okay? And really the reason that I feel so compelled to make a video on this solely dedicated to this, and I'll probably refer to this video and a lot of the other videos that I record on the channel because this is just such a foundational idea, is because really, anything in life where we're trying to improve ourselves, we're constantly trying to look for some external tool or method or technique to make our life better. And what you find is that no matter how long you're in self-development for, I've been in it, for over 10 years myself. But what you'll find is that no matter how long you're in self-development for, you're constantly battling against yourself. You're playing the game of life with fucking weights on your ankles. And your day-to-day life, it can either be like trudging through the mud or it can be like floating on a cloud. And what I've found is that really what determines either or is your level of consciousness that you live in on a day-to-day basis. And I got into release work originally because I wanted to work on my crippling anxiety and shyness socially. I wanted to get more confident around women and feel comfortable in my own skin around women. And that's just how it started. And I got that and way more. My fucking dating life exploded after applying this in the way that, I'm going to talk with you about it. But it also just made my life easier. I've gone through several different almost life crisis moments at a very young age. I'm only 21 at the time of recording this. I'll be 22 in like a month. And this practice has allowed me to discover my own inner teacher and to reconnect to my intuition and to my higher states of consciousness and to escape the day-to-day, mundane life or even hellish life of fighting against myself. And it's a practice that if you apply to your life, I know is going to change your fucking life because I've been through it all in terms of self-development. I read all the books on self-development. I've been through all the paradigms, the hustle, the willpower, the discipline, the grit. I was a boxer for most of my life. I'm very familiar with the paradigm of discipline and hating yourself and fighting against yourself every day to kick your ass and get the most out of you, you piece of shit, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm very familiar with feeling insecure and anxious in social settings and not being able to be comfortable in my own skin when I'm around women who I think are more attractive than me or guys who I think are higher status than me. I know what that's like. And I've read all the literature on it. And I've practiced all the different styles of dealing with that. But at the end of the day, it's teaching you how to fight against yourself. And it's never addressing the core issue of, well, how did you get this way in the first place? Why do you have to live your life in a way where you're constantly fighting against yourself in the first place? And how do you undo that mess that has been created through social conditioning, through the conditioning that your parents gave you, that your life experience gave you, your teachers gave you? And how do you return to a place of genuine self-esteem and intuition where you kind of just live your life? Life is no longer happening to you, but it's happening for you. And you're in connection with consciousness, you're closer to realizing the self and you're not living through the animal ego so much. That's what release work's all about, okay? And we're going to go really deep on it today. And this is not a video that you're just going to watch it and then everything's going to be different. What you're going to experience in this video is words, okay? To actually understand the profound depth that this can provide your life with, you're going to have to actually practice it with consistency, okay? Because what we're talking about isn't some little quick tip, all right? One little quick tip to feel better and to cope with your pain. What we're talking about is going to the fucking heart of the pain and dissolving the issue at its core, all right? And that's going to require some deep inner work, and it's going to require persistence. But what I found is that the more momentum you build with this practice of letting go and release work and introspection, constant self-inquiry, is that it has a compound effect over time, and it just keeps accelerating and getting better and better and better. And while at the beginning it might be kind of hard for you to grasp, kind of hard for you to understand, as you understand it better and as you actually practice it and experientially begin to see the side effects of it, you are just going to fall in love with this like I did, And really, the book that put me onto it was this book right here, Letting Go by David R. Hawkins. Levels of Energy by Fred Dodson. He also talks about it in here. But really, right here, this book put me onto it, David R. Hawkins. And he's also got another great book, Power versus Force. All of his fucking books are good. I've read pretty much all of them at this point. He's got 9. And I'm going to be taking you through everything that you need to know about this process. So this is going to be a deep video. There's not going to be jump cuts. There's not going to be little quick tips. This is the deep work. This is the real work that's actually going to change your life. No strings attached. This is going to be almost like a little mini course, so to speak. There's going to be a ton of value jam-packed into it. I have a ton of notes written on my phone because it's going to be a very information-dense video that you can then go and apply right after watching it. So, if you're just doom scrolling, you happen to click on this video, just keep doom scrolling, go to something else, go to the next little quick hit of dopamine, keep coping, because this isn't the place for you. This is for the people that want to do the real work. They want to dissolve their ego, their limitation in life, and they want to connect more to consciousness. They want to connect more to the divine presence and flow of life, and to let go of their chronic anxieties, their chronic fears, frustrations, angers, resentments, issues. Really, this is the ultimate tool to have, do, or be whatever it is that you want in your life. All right? No amount of brainwashing yourself with affirmations, no amount of doing visualization and giving yourself synthetic experience, no amount of trying to mimic other people's behaviors and changing your habits. Listen, all of that is going through the ego, the animal mind, the limited version of you. This is about dissolving it, finding your inner teacher, and finding levels of flow and abundance that are considered godlike compared to the average population. All right? And that's not to say that you're better than the average population. This is not a practice that you do where it's like, oh, I let go. I'm superior to other people. I don't have an ego, because that's the ego coming in the back door. It's a practice of deep humility and facing your deepest, darkest fears and insecurities and issues that have been plaguing you and fucking up your life for your whole life up to this point. All right, so this is the real work. This is the deep work. And I hope you are locked the fuck in and you're ready to take some notes, because again, I'm going to cover this from head to toe. And I've really jam-packed my, I'm going to be looking at my phone a lot in this video, but it's just because there is a ton of information that I have to get from my brain into your brain. And I don't recommend skipping through this video. This is not the doom scroll video, the dopamine video, oh, let me skip around. No, if you want to get full value from the video, actually fucking lock in. What have you got to lose? If you're still listening to me talk at this point, you're clearly interested enough to a certain point where you're like, listen, bro, I've been trying so many different things. I just want something that's going to help. This is going to help you. This is the answer to your problem. But you have to lock in and you have to allow me to deliver the value to you. Okay, so I recommend, like I said, take a bunch of notes. And again, this is a practice that you have to actually experience. So I want you to go apply it when we're done talking about it. All right. So, as I alluded to, I've been studying self-improvement for 10 years now. I've tried every method, technique, and pathway imaginable in my journey of self-actualization, constantly fighting against the inferiority complex that I developed throughout my childhood. All right, and today I'm going to share this pathway with you that I believe to be hands down the most accurate explanation as to why you are the way that you are, and why your life is the way that it is, and how you can actually fucking change it. Not just psychoanalyze your problems, but how do you actually change your life experience. All right? And it's the pathway of surrender, letting go, release work, and that's all that this is going to be about today. All right? And so my goal with today's video is to give you all the knowledge as to why your life is the way that it is right now in as much detail as possible, and to give you the technique and the roadmap that will allow you to completely leave your current life situation behind, and again, to have, do, or be whatever it is that you want in life. I've used this approach to completely change my life, and I know that you can use it too, so I'm very excited to share it with you. All right, and you could almost view this as like you're snipping the weights off of your ankles and you're strapping yourself to a fucking hot air balloon. That's what I would consider this, or I mean, I would compare this practice to. It's truly life-changing. Okay? So, really, suppressed emotions, they've hijacked your life, and they're running your life. And what we're going to do is we're going to let them go. I'm going to teach you how to let them go. It's going to change everything for you, okay? So the first section here is, what is the source of all limitation in your life, okay? So first we have to understand the psychological and spiritual underpinnings behind this concept, because letting go does have more of a spiritual underpinning. And, you know, if you resist that a little bit, I totally get it, because I did too at first until I started to actually experience what this practice did for me. But again, I've experientially verified it to be true. And so just humor me as I go into kind of the underpinnings of how all this works. So when we are born, when you are born, your soul or your consciousness is projected into your body, and you're very self-expressive, okay? That's that saying in the Bible, the kingdom of God is within you, really exemplifies this. And it's like, you know, when you see a baby, or when you see somebody that's like a young kid that's very high self-esteem, the self with a capital S is shining through. That is self-esteem. That is genuine self-expression, genuine radiance right there. Okay? And you'll notice that people who primarily operate through, you know, the self, they have easier and more abundant lives. So people that keep that self-esteem and they carry it into their later, you know, parts of their life, they're actually operating at a higher level of consciousness than you. And they're experiencing an easier life than you, a more abundant and joyful life than you in terms of health, wealth, and relationships as a result. Okay? But regardless of the fact that we're born with this, and that it's innate, and that it's our natural state to be more self-expressive, because our species evolved from a very primal background, we have a very primal and animal part of our brain that is fixated on our survival. Okay, and we could call this animal nature our ego. Our ego, being animal, is fueled by the emotions that psychoanalysis labels as emergency emotions, which are related, excuse me, which are related to the survival of the body. Okay, and these survival emotions, so to speak, include shame, apathy, grief, fear, lust, anger, and pride. And they are very intense sensations that are felt in the body. And that's all an emotion is, by the way. It's just a label that you put on a sensation that you feel in the body. Fear, you know, it's maybe your heart's pounding, it's shortness of breath, it's a tightness in the stomach. The other emotions is the same thing. They have sensations. We just know how to label them. And emotions are useful because they're an easy way to label sensations. Okay? So really what happens is if you experience frequent bouts of these survival emotions throughout your childhood due to your circumstances, what happens is because they are so intense, and because you're usually young when you deal with them, you start to suppress them. Okay? You start to push them out of your conscious mind because they're just too intense to deal with. You distract yourself, you push them away because it's just too much to deal with. And we think that that's letting them go. We think that we're letting go of those things that have happened to us, but in reality, suppression, it actually stores the emotions and the sensations into us, and they don't leave us. Okay? And what happens is these suppressed emotions, they further fuel our ego, our animal nature, and our moment-to-moment decision making. So basically what happens over time is that you begin to identify with the animal mind more and more as a result of having all these suppressed survival emotions inside of you. And, that ego, that animal part of you, develops a very defensive posture because it thinks that that is what will keep you safe. All right? It thinks that that is what will keep you safe. So it constructs a very restrictive, limited identity or self-image, which is basically, this is who I am and this is what I deserve. And it tries to stay congruent to that self-image, that self-concept at all times as a survival reflex. It thinks that doing so will keep you safe and alive because your ego, the animal part of you, which is comprised of those lower survival emotions and states of consciousness, their primary goal is survival of your body. Okay? So if you are living kind of a shitty or very effortful life right now, it's because there's a lot of ego involved. If your life, if your social interactions, if your relationships, if your life in general takes a lot of effort to get through, it's because you're living through this animal part of you that's fixated on survival. It's fixated on coping and not thriving. All right? And so this overly constrictive self-image or inferiority complex, as I like to call it, keeps you in a box for your whole life. And this is what most people experience. According to Dr. David R. Hawkins in his books, 85% of the population are primarily living in this mode, primarily living through the ego. And maybe you can experientially verify this to be true when you just look around at your surroundings and the world around you. Okay? And so the animal in you is constantly afraid, baring its teeth to scare off others, or it's doing a combination of just being in fear and contraction in general. It's doing the two. And you've identified with that type of behavior as being you. But really, it's just a construct of the ego. That inferiority complex, that limited, shy, introvert self-image, that version of you that's fighting against yourself, that's not you, bro. That's not you, girl. If you're a girl listening to this, probably most of the guys, but it's valuable equally for both sexes. But that's not you. It's an animal part of you that you've started to identify with. Okay? And again, it's just a construct of the ego. It's just a behavioral pattern, and it doesn't have to be permanent. Okay? So like I said, the ego's primary goal is to keep you safe, and it does this at the expense of seeing the world accurately. So what do I mean by this? You'll notice that a lot of your compulsive behavioral patterns or limitations don't rationally make sense, right? But guess what? Your ego, your animal mind, would rather be safe than sorry. So it boxes you in as tightly as possible because that maximizes your chances of survival. Okay? Now, how do you know that you're the victim of this? How do you know that maybe you're not seeing the world accurately? Well, in your day-to-day life or on a reoccurring basis, your emotions will misfire. They'll go off at inappropriate times, right? There's so many animalistic, lower consciousness survival emotions that are being suppressed, that you're suppressing at any given time, that you develop an oversensitivity or sense of constriction. So for example, I talk about dating a lot on this channel. As a man, maybe you go to talk to a 90-pound woman, cute girl, like at the gym or something, but your heart is pounding, you have shortness of breath, and you're running out of things to say. That would be an appropriate response if somebody was holding a gun to your head, but that's not what's happening. You're just talking to a girl that's half your size in most cases, So that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Your ego is not seeing the world accurately. It has an overly constricted self-image, and it's trying to keep you safe. Okay? And so what's happening is again, it thinks that your survival is at risk by asking for more than what you deserve, than what your self-concept deserves. So this exact loop is happening to you in many different areas of your life, many different ways in your life. And it's why when you go to improve your life or self-actualize in any way, you're fighting against yourself internally. All right? It's your ego identity trying to keep you safe. That's all it is. Make sure my fucking mic's on. All right, it is. No. Thank God. So the problem here is that you falsely identify that the ego is you, when in reality it's just a collection of beliefs, self-concepts, etc., that are fueled by an abundance of suppressed emotions that are inside of you. So to simplify this down even further, all of these lower states of consciousness, these lower animal emotions, they come from three main wants. All right? Wanting control, wanting approval, and wanting security and survival, which is the root of everything, is wanting survival. The other two relate to wanting survival, the other two wants. And that's how our limited animal ego interprets the world. All right? And the tricky part with all of this is that our world has identified with the ego. We don't know the difference between the ego and the self. And you might still be like, what's the difference? Again, when you practice this, it'll make sense. You'll experience it. But yeah, the tricky part's that the world doesn't know the difference between the two. And so we don't recognize that we are so much more than this limited construct that we've formed in reaction to the life that we've lived. All right? And our animal nature dominates us, and then we use our rational thinking, our prefrontal cortex, to do all of these mental gymnastics to rationalize our day-to-day behavior. But at the end of the day, it's all ego motivated, and most of us are living through the ego. So overall, the ego and these suppressed survival emotions that fuel it block our natural higher states of consciousness, which are a more pure expression of our real self. Okay? And so the ego is a limited construct. It's not us, and it can be let go of so that we can return to a place of self-realization and easily have, be, or do whatever it is that we want in life. All right? So that's the introduction, is that the world thinks that it is the ego. And in this world, we worship the ego, we live through the ego, and we don't even fucking realize that the ego is just a set of animalistic programs. It's not us. You can transcend it. It doesn't have to be you. You don't have to fight against it. You can transcend it through release work. Okay? So that brings me to section 2 of our little mini course here. And that is your level of consciousness. Your level of consciousness. You watching this. All right? So your life as you see it is an exact reflection of your sum total of thinking at this moment. Okay, so your sum total of thinking at this moment in time. So this is in terms of your overall quality of life and whether or not you're accomplishing your goals. If we were to put your mind on a spreadsheet and shine a light on every thought, conscious and unconscious, you would see that you're getting exactly what you want out of your life in terms of health, wealth, and relationships. But the tricky part is that you just might not be aware of the part of you that wants it. Oftentimes, the subconscious wants things that the conscious doesn't want. All right? And that's why this work is so important, because it shines a light on everything. And that's the constant practice that we do, is we shine a light on everything. Okay? And we let go of it. So the way that we can have, do, or be anything that we want is by letting go of these suppressed ego emotions that are holding us back and that are not aligned with our ideal life and our goals. Okay? And this can be applied to any goal or just improving your life in general. So when we do that, we begin to take action from a place of inspiration instead of fear and desperation. And we align with our ideal life or with our goal effortlessly, because abundance is our natural state. All right? Abundance is our natural state. So a very useful way of discerning where you're at in the journey is by, referencing something like David Hawkins' map of consciousness. Okay? The lower levels, and I'll put that up on the screen here somewhere. The lower levels of consciousness, you'll notice, are rooted in the animal nature, in our animal nature, the ego. The higher levels of consciousness are more aligned with the self. The level that you sit at is just a way of describing your sum total of thinking at this moment in your life. All right? And you experience pockets of all of these emotions on this scale. That's the human experience. Okay? But you tend to sit at one of these primarily and within a range of that emotion. All right? So it's very unlikely that somebody in apathy will experience a high peak state of joy, like true joy. Not just cheap fucking dopamine, TikTok, but like actual true joy. It's usually not going to happen. All right, so you do tend to sit within a range and you tend to experience one predominantly. All right, and the level that you sit at can be used to accurately predict the emotions that you experience on a day-to-day basis, your view of the world and the people in it, your view of God, and the circumstances that you actually attract into your life as your way, due to your way of being and your level of consciousness. All right, and at the lower levels of consciousness, this is key, you're using so much of your personal energy and willpower to suppress emotions that you barely have any willpower left over. So the further down you are on that scale, the more energy it's taking for you to suppress those thoughts and those feelings. All right? So basically, more towards the bottom, you're in coping and you're not in thriving. And this is why maybe your life feels like you're on a constant hamster wheel of resisting where you're at and wanting some better future. You're attached to the level of consciousness that you're at as well because it satiates your ego. It's an energetic addiction. And we stay in these lower pockets of consciousness when we're identified as the ego. All right? And as we let go of the limiting ego-based suppressed emotions that are keeping us in contraction and are stopping us from having, doing, or being what we want in life, we naturally move up the scale to more empowering, emotional, energetic states where we feel inspired to take action. All right? And you could view it as clearing the kinks in the hose, allowing the self, right, the naturally abundant self, to shine through. These more empowering emotional states, these states of consciousness, are less restrictive when compared to the ego, and they allow us to accomplish more in our life with less effort. All right, David Hawkins talks about this in Power versus Force. So there's less internal conflict, when you reach these higher states, and as a result, you get more access to your willpower, your peace, and your happiness. You don't have to try to force yourself to feel these higher emotional states or these higher states of consciousness. They're the natural consequence of letting go of the lower ones, again, because the higher ones are in our nature. So the more that we release these suppressed emotions inside of us, the more we move up the scale. All right, and our entire level of consciousness as a whole starts to begin to shift. When we let go of fear, apathy, pride, anger, etc., when it comes to even just one goal that we have in our life, it has a cumulative effect on our overall level of consciousness, and it releases our limitation in all of the areas of our lives. And this is because releasing these suppressed feelings has a compound effect on reducing our identification with the ego. All right? And this is an organic process. Again, this sounds very like, damn, it's like this is very coming at you. You got to experience it to understand what I'm talking about. So overall, life just gets better when you understand this stuff and you put it into practice. You stop identifying with the story of why you are the way you are. You stop identifying with some limited self-image, and you recognize that that was formed as a survival strategy. All right? And your ego, it starts to lose its grip, and you get more access to your energy and your willpower, and you stop backsliding on your goals the more that you do letting go, the more that you practice letting go and release work. Each and every release, this is key, each and every release that you do, each and every letting go session that you do throughout your day, whether it's intense or whether it is subtle in terms of the emotions that you feel during the experience, the sensations that you feel, has a cumulative effect on every area of your life experience. So again, this shit has a compound effect. It affects every area of your life. Every release is helping you. It's helping release that stored up pressure cooker of suppressed emotions that you're carrying around with you, which are more than likely survival emotions if you're watching this. They're keeping you trapped. All right? So that brings us to section 3. I know, this is a fucking dense one. This is the most dense video on the channel, probably. Section 3, the self. So, up until this point, based on what we've covered, you'll start to begin to see that 99% of self-improvement advice is about improving, readjusting, or battling against the ego. All right, fixing our self-image, fixing our beliefs, our core beliefs, our habits, etc. But it all comes from the false premise that we are the ego, that you are the ego. And as much and much of the advice teaches us to battle against our internal conflicts rather than to release them. All right, and to really get a clearer picture of the self, again, and I kind of alluded to this more at the beginning, look at a child that has not been socially conditioned yet. Look to somebody who has an immense amount of self-esteem and confidence with little social inhibition. They're operating in a totally different state of consciousness than you are. What they're doing is way fucking easier than what you're doing. It takes very little effort for them to be that radiant and joyful when compared to the amount of effort that you're expending to suppress and run away from how you feel internally. And again, you might not consciously realize just how much you're running away. When you start to implement this practice in your life, you start to realize, holy fuck, 90% of my actions in my day-to-day life are motivated by wanting to run away from what I feel. We don't realize this. We don't consciously do this because, especially if you're in self-improvement, you're like, no, you're like, I'm working on myself. Nah, bro, 90% of what you do is running away from how you feel. You may not even realize it because these suppressed emotions, they operate at such a subtle level, and they cause you to form habits at such a subtle level. All right? So the self is naturally intuitive, attractive, radiant, and can create any reality that it wants effortlessly. When we identify with our animal nature, our ego, the self no longer shines through as brightly. There's more kinks in the hose when it comes to that self-expression. All right, and the lower that you are in terms of your default state of consciousness, the more dimmed that light of your true self is, the less the self is shining through. All right, and again, I alluded to this earlier, but that's a good audit that you can do right now. How much effort do you use on a day-to-day basis? How much effort does it take to get by to get through each day? The more effort it takes, the more you're living through the ego. So if your life is taking a lot of effort, if your social interactions, your dating interactions, your relationships, if you're goal striving, whatever it may be, if it's taking a fuck ton of effort, it's because you're more tapped in with ego states than with higher consciousness states. All right? And again, this can all sound a bit esoteric, which I totally get. Because it was hard for me to get it at first too, because I was very logical and left brain when I got into self-improvement. I'm a man, so I'm naturally more fucking, dumb, fucking logical, like the Easter Island head. Like, that's more the way that I think naturally, right? And so I would like to give you a brief explanation as to how I actually started to buy into this before I even started practicing. So the way that I found release work was by improving my social skills, my confidence, my ability to attract women, again, because I suffered from a very low self-esteem as a kid. All right, and when I got started with improving myself, the first book that I read on, getting better with women taught me to mimic high status behaviors in order to create attraction, which took a lot of work because I did not feel high status inside. I was fighting against that limited self-image, and my confidence was always fluctuating. So later in my journey, I started to seek out other information. One of the places that I got my information from in terms of dating, relationships, communication advice was this old pickup company, dating company, Real Social Dynamics, specifically from this guy named R.S.D. Tyler. And he said that your emotional state is governed by your, or rather that your emotional state governs your behavior and your actions. So instead of trying to mimic high status behavior, what's much more effective is to operate from a solid emotional state. All right, and when you do that, creating attraction takes almost no effort. You can say anything, you can do anything, your jokes will hit, you'll be extremely charismatic when you get into the right emotional state. All right, attraction almost takes no effort. So what he did is he actually taught a method for getting into basically a social flow state every night that you went out or every time you went to go talk to girls. He called it the 6 steps. all right? And it was about how to get out of your head and into the moment, get into a great emotional flow state while you're out. And it came down to this. When you enter a venue, and you can practice this too, you can experience this yourself firsthand. When you enter any type of social gathering or venue and you're trapped in your head, if you give your brain, your mind, the animal part of you proof that it's safe to be loud and expressive, simply by just going up and talking to a bunch of people, you don't even have to be loud and expressive at first. If you just go and talk to a bunch of people in the environment that you're in, you'll give your mind proof that it's safe to act outside of that range of the limited self-image, and your charisma will just explode outward. Like you will go from like completely trapped in your head to completely out of your head in a matter of minutes, and it's incredible when you experience this. All you got to do is just go talk to a bunch of people while you're out, and you'll get into a flow. It doesn't matter how shy you are, it'll really completely change yourself very quickly. And that was my first introduction to the self with a capital S. All right? Because when I was able to consistently shift from being trapped in my fucking head and shy to having insane, effortless charisma and confidence in a matter of minutes, I began to ask myself what was going on. How can I naturally, it's like, how can I go from just being in a box to just being totally free in a matter of minutes? Like, there has to be something going on here. And so I started to ask myself, how can I naturally shift my life experience to this effortless, naturally attractive way of being as a default? And that's how I really got into release work, because I wanted to live my life out of my head and in the moment, not just by doing all these different little exercises to get into a flow state, And so the more that I practice this, that I have practiced release work over time, and by the way, that's what Eckhart Tolle talks about. When Eckhart Tolle talks about being and he talks about this presence, he's talking about the fact that the self is always here. It's just being blocked by these animal states of consciousness that are creating all these thoughts, right? So the more that I practice release work and letting go over time, the more that I have personally been able to shift to a place of effortless self-expression and ease of living. The more that I've released, the more that I've let go of inauthentic goals that I had throughout my life, the more I've have aligned with my intuitive sense of purpose, which is what I'm teaching you now. This is my passion, obviously, if you couldn't tell. So this has positively affected me in every area of my life with all of my goals. Less effort, more results, okay? And I experience and see the world totally differently than when I was younger. And my relationships after doing this type of inner work are totally different than they were before. They're way more effortless and fun and joyful and loving. And additionally, I've found that as I let go, I experience more and more synchronicities where things just poof appear in my life. As soon as I let go of wanting a particular person, I get a phone call from him. As soon as I let go of the fear around something, a new door opens automatically. I get a new epiphany. As soon as I let go of a deep-rooted belief, I get immediately, naturally, spontaneously compelled to do something that just positively impacts my life and affects my life. It's crazy. And again, this must be experienced firsthand to understand. Intellectually, it just doesn't make sense. David Hawkins talks about this in his books. He talks about the fact that most of us live in the linear world of causality where it's, oh, I do this and it causes this to happen. But as you get more into this work, you start to, get into more of the subjective experience of reality where what you are is attracting the type of life that you have. And he explains that in his books. That's even more esoteric. I'm not going to get into that. But really, again, intellectually, it just doesn't make sense. And it didn't to me when I started this work. When I started this work, I was apprehensive. I was like, I'm not sure about this. And but eventually, I just had so many radical shifts that were just unexplainable that I came to the realization that what this process is it's about just shifting your life to a completely different energy altogether. All right, one where you leave the denseness of the ego far behind you and you start to re-identify with the effortless and abundance self. Okay, the abundant self. And so that brings me to section 4, the section we've all been waiting for, which is the actual process of release work and letting go. All right, and it's important that you got that stuff beforehand because it adds a lot of context to what we're about to go into. All right, so at this point, we've talked about how these suppressed feelings fuel a false, limiting identity, which, again, it's the ego we falsely identified with. These suppressed feelings both determine our day-to-day living experience as well as our ability to attain certain goals that we have. So what I'm going to do is describe to you the mechanism of letting go, how to apply it to your life overall, as well as to specific goals when it comes to having, doing, or being anything that you desire. All right, and again, we can have, do, or be anything as long as we are fully released on it. Okay? So all releasing is, all letting go is it's a self-inquiry and the willingness to be open to what we've been pushing out of our awareness for so long. Letting go is not complicated, it's extremely simple. It's deceptively simple, which is why most people, they kind of just dabble with it a little bit. They're just dabblers. They kind of get into a little bit. They're like, they do something else. They start trying to learn all these self-improvement techniques again. And it's like, bro, just trust the process, okay? So one of the first things that you should understand when it comes to release work is this. Emotions do not hold on to us. We hold on to them. We are clinging on to things. You are clinging on to things that your ego gets gratification from, and you are holding down what it wants to avoid dealing with. All right? And so to let go of a feeling, all we have to do is bring it up into our conscious awareness. To let go of a feeling, all you have to do is bring it up into your conscious awareness to where you can feel it and recognize it in the body as a sensation. And the sensation might be very subtle, or a little bit more intense. From there, all you have to do is relax into the feeling fully, without labeling it, without judging it, without resisting it, right? And you simply just feel the feelings as vividly as you can without forcing it, without trying to force yourself to feel anything. You're just letting them come up until they run out, all right? And all feelings, all suppressed feelings that you've been running away from, they have a shelf life. And when you're with them unconditionally, eventually they run out. So all letting go is a self-inquiry where you are bringing things up, you're bringing suppressed emotions up that manifest as sensations in the body. And again, they are very intense sometimes and they're very subtle other times, but every release has a cumulative effect, okay? So if you simply are with it without resisting it, without saying, oh, I don't like this feeling, I don't want to feel it, but if you're just totally with it, you embrace it fully, you relax into it, and you dive into it as best you can on a repeated basis when it comes to any issue or anything you're dealing with, eventually the suppressed feeling will dissolve. All feelings have a shelf life. All right? And these feelings, again, they fuel your limiting beliefs. And again, we talked about them, right? Apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride. They fuel the ego. They fuel your limiting beliefs, your day-to-day feeling state, your limited self-image. And so as a result, any type of release on anything, you're going to be releasing one of these suppressed emotions or multiple of them, and it's going to be helpful across the board, okay? So if you let go of apathy around one goal, or if you let go of the apathetic thoughts or feelings that you're suppressing within yourself, just in general, it has a cumulative effect in that it reduces the apathy feelings that you have around other things as well, okay? So any practice at all, I'm going to give you some, but any practice that brings these sensations into your conscious awareness so that you can let go of them is valuable. And again, I'm going to be sharing some of my favorites with you in a moment, some introductory ones so you can practice yourself. But another key point here, letting go is not about understanding your problems on an intellectual level. Although oftentimes when you let go, you do gain clarity of them. Once you've fully let go of the feelings around something, you do gain a lot of clarity and a lot of epiphanies. The truth becomes obvious to you many times. But letting go isn't about intellectually understanding your problems or where they come from. All right? Letting go is simply about releasing the illusion of what you are not and stepping into who you truly are, the self. Do not get caught up in thoughts while you're letting go. Thoughts are cyclical and they're never ending, okay? Suppressed feelings, they are what cause thoughts in the first place. So by letting go of just one suppressed feeling, you are letting go. You could quite possibly quiet millions of potential thoughts all at once. Incredibly powerful stuff we're dealing with here. And again, the actual practice while you do it, it might be intense, it might be subtle. You realize it over time. I'll get into that. But this is incredibly powerful over time. All right. And resistance to feelings themselves can block your process of letting go of things, as well as resistance and doubt that you have towards the technique of letting go. So what I suggest is just be open and allow whatever comes up in your awareness to come up while you practice letting go. And we'll get into the specific practices in a minute. You got nothing to lose. Let go of your resistance towards feeling things. A lot of guys, especially me when I started this, I was like, man, you're a pussy. What we're talking about are feelings now. Listen, you can either be a tough guy and be fucking miserable on the brink of suicide, or you can deal with this stuff and you can live a good life. The choice is yours. Okay, so let go of the resistance you have to feeling things in general and let go of your doubt towards the technique. Just be open-minded. All right? And again, would you rather be a tough guy and suffer or just feel the feelings and release them? The choice is yours. Every releasing session, this is so key. Every releasing session will be different. Sometimes you'll release on a specific issue and you'll feel very subtle shifts and sensations in the body. Other times, very intense sensations will come up. Each release, no matter how mundane and kind of simple and subtle it is, or blank it feels, or how intense it feels, each release is stripping away either at layers of resistance or layers of emotion and is chipping away at the suppressed reservoir of feelings that are stopping you from having, doing, or being what you want in life. So it doesn't matter if you do a release one day and it's kind of subtle, or you do a release another day and it's kind of intense. That doesn't fucking matter. Each type of release and any type of release when you go to do it is valuable. Because what you'll find is that if you're genuinely being open to whatever is coming up when you do this session, it's lifting a layer of resistance. And what you'll find is that, eventually, like, you'll chip away at an issue long enough, and eventually you will experience like a more intense release after a while because you've been releasing the resistance over time. You've been releasing the story that you're attached to this issue or this problem. You're released to the resistance that has been causing it to stay in place this whole time. But again, it's not about the intensity or the subtlety in the moment. And this is why I highly recommend you actually create a gains journal when it comes to letting go, because the results of letting go, they can be subtle, but over the weeks or months that you practice letting go, you'll notice massive shifts when you look at the before and after. But again, because a lot of this is like internal shifts, it's not about like externally going to the gym and lifting weights where you can physically see it in the mirror. A lot of this is about internal shifts, so it's very important to actually, kind of almost track down the differences, because there will be differences over time, especially when you're dealing with chronic issues. It's important to take those 1% differences because they accumulate over time, and then you notice, fuck, I've been letting go a lot, and it's like I'm totally different now, but it's subtle and it can happen over time with persistence. So it's important to be aware of that as well, because don't expect to just do a releasing session, a letting go session, and to like just go fucking Super Saiyan. It's not going to happen. That's not the way that it goes. All right, this is the real work. This is intense. This is inner work. All right. So what I wrote down here as well is that persistence and patience is key. The more that you make this a consistent practice in your life, the more in tune you will become with your body and the more emotionally intelligent that you will be. All right, so in the beginning, you might be getting caught up in the thoughts a lot. You might be trying to let go from your head. You're not really feeling what's going on in your body. That's fine. I was like that too when I started this practice. Again, I was very left brain, so I was like, am I doing it right? You're doing it right as long as you're being open to whatever comes up, all right? But with consistent practice, you'll get very in tune and you'll be able to start to feel things in your body that you never even felt before as you keep practicing. Okay, and you'll get much more emotionally intelligent. The more you become open and willing, the more the suppressed emotions will offer themselves to you as you begin to integrate releasing in your day-to-day life. So in the beginning, because you're not used to it, those emotions are really stuffed down there. But as you become more open and willing, you'll find that they start to offer themselves up into your consciousness more and more throughout the day and more throughout the sessions that you do. Okay? And as you make this a constant practice in your life, which it should be to get the best results from it, things will be offering themselves up to you left and right to be released. And so what you want to do is you want to be patient and you want to build what I like to call releasing momentum. All right? Because really a momentum does build the more that you do it and the more that you make it a constant practice. And really it's easy to make it a constant practice once you see how much it'll affect your life. Now, how do you know when you've released on a specific issue? You'll often feel a sense of lightness or relief. All right? That's how you know that you've let go a little bit. You don't always let go of everything surrounding an issue or let go of all the emotions suppressing you at once, but you'll feel a sense of lightness or relief, and that means that you've let go of a little bit of it. And again, it has a cumulative effect over time. So, a good analogy is, have you maybe ever had something that was extremely important for you and that was on your mind for maybe hours or days in a row, and then you got that thing and then all of a sudden, you just stop caring about it completely? It's a similar feeling to that, but there's like a gradient of how intense it is. But it's a similar feeling to that, all right? At least in my experience and in many others' experiences. Okay? So some issues that you're working on and that you're practicing letting go with may take multiple sessions to release on, and that's totally fine. Stay persistent and know that this is so key. Stay persistent and know that each release is helping you move forward and is having a positive effect across the board. Some releasing sessions will be very subtle and others will be more profound, but all are equally valuable and are a step in the journey. All right, you need each step there. You can't just skip steps. All right, and we are back. The camera actually died, so I had to charge her up so that we could pick right back up where we were, and that was where I was about to make this point right here. When you fully released on an issue, right, when you've done all the letting go that you can do on that issue, there will be no more inner emotional conflict surrounding it. Okay, and this is very important to understand. So, for example, a traumatic memory. Maybe you think of a certain memory and, it was something traumatic that happened to you. Some intense memory that happened to you throughout your life or your childhood. Could be recent or a long time ago. But maybe there's a certain memory where your heart starts, to beat quickly. You get a little bit of a tightness in the stomach, like you get shortness of breath when you think about it. Something that was very intense. If you've applied the letting go technique to that memory, just for example, enough times, you can think of that memory and it'll just be like a movie screen. Like there won't be any emotional attachment to it. You'll just be watching it, right? So there won't be any more of those suppressed emotions there in regards to it. All right. Another example, how do you know that you fully let go? So, I used the letting go technique to get better with women, to get better socially over the years. And so when you have let go enough, you'll get to the point where you feel very little to almost no social anxiety or performance anxiety when you're around women. All right, and you'll notice that inside of yourself. Maybe you get started working on your ability to attract women to be more socially confident. And in the beginning, there's a lot of nerves that are going on and whatnot. But as you get deeper into it, and you probably apply more letting go to it, over time, what you find is that those feelings just aren't there anymore. You're very comfortable, you're very relaxed, and you're not using a lot of effort in the interactions, right? So that's how you know that you have really done some good work on an issue, is that there's that inner emotional conflict, it's not there, or it's a lot less. Okay, and when you fully release on an issue, there is no more, there's no more inner conflict, there's no more inner turmoil, there's no more attachment or aversion to the specific issue emotionally. All right, now releasing can have powerful effects on us that we don't notice. And we're often only first made aware of these changes when somebody else comments on it. Okay? Because when you're releasing, It can be something that has a compound effect over time. And because you're with yourself every day and you don't necessarily notice the subtle shifts, you can almost kind of not even realize that you're changing in certain ways, just out of habit, because you've identified with the ego for so long. As you start to let go of it, you don't even really notice. You start to kind of just fall on the wayside, because releasing is about getting to a place where you put in a lot less effort, all right, as your way of being, So what I highly recommend is that you actually keep a gains journal, right? So at the beginning of the month, you have your issues that you want to release on and work on. And then at the end of the month, you come back and you write down the difference between day 1 and day 30 and applying the letting go technique or the releasing to it. All right, I highly recommend you do those gains, because you can just notice how much of an impact this will have on your life. Sometimes you release on things and it's like boom, like you just have this inner intense moment where things change for you, or but a lot of the time it's just subtle compound effects that just make a massive difference over time, where you create permanent change in yourself. But again, because you're with yourself every day and because it's happening subtly, you don't notice it. But really, it's important to reflect on just how much you're changing while you're doing it, you know? And if you're dealing with chronic issues that have been plaguing you for a lifetime, it can be very important, because a lot of the time with releasing, you're making 1% improvements and you're like chipping away at the dam of suppressed emotions. And then all of a sudden, you're making big leaps and bounds of progress, because you've never really done this before. So it's important. I highly recommend you keep a gains journal, so that you can document the changes, throughout the months, as you keep applying releasing, throughout the weeks and months as you apply releasing. All right, I highly recommend that. Now, another thing that's very important, another principle when it comes to releasing that's very important, before we go into the specific ways of how to do it, never try to force yourself to feel anything. All right. So never try to force yourself to feel an emotion, or put a label on the releasing experience, letting go experience, and say it needs to be this, it needs to be that. Listen, sometimes you're going to release, and like I said, it's going to feel very subtle. It's going to feel very incremental. Maybe you'll just feel blankness, right? Which is just this resistance. Maybe you just feel blankness. Maybe you feel resistance in general. Just keep releasing, right? Never try to force yourself to feel anything. Simply just be open to whatever comes up, because it's a process of self-inquiry, and it's a process of honest self-inquiry. It's not about trying to force yourself to feel anything. And what I recommend is just simply shift between the different methods and ways of going about releasing. Releasing, again, at the core of it, it's just you're just letting go of something. You're just allowing the emotions to run out. But there's different ways that you can go about kind of poking at yourself and asking yourself questions that get certain sensations to pop up and put your conscious awareness on things that were previously unconscious. All right. And so all I recommend is that instead of trying to force yourself to feel anything, let go of that label, just keep releasing. Again, just be persistent with the practice, no matter how subtle or how intense these sessions are. But shift between the different ways that I'm going to share with you, to poke at your unconscious mind in different ways. So when you do a releasing or a letting go session, or you're just letting go throughout the day, whatever comes up will just come up. When you're open, all you're doing is saying, hey, I allow this part of myself that I've rejected to now be seen. I allow it to become conscious. These things that I've been running away from, maybe not even consciously running away from, but you'll realize as you do this practice more and more, you've been running away from so much. You just simply allow whatever is willing to offer itself up to you to come up to you, and you use these different ways to go about poking at the unconscious. But you really want to release your resistance, like I said earlier, to feeling the emotions in the first place, to feeling the sensations. You got to release the resistance. And then and what that means is you have to be okay with the resistance being there. You have to accept how much you're resisting it for it to dissolve. Okay, that's the letting go technique. It's just being with what you're feeling unconditionally, without labeling it or judging it, right? And just allowing it to run out and take its course. All right, so you want to release that resistance to feeling in general, and then you want to release your expectations about what needs to happen while you're doing a release, okay? Remember, like I said, each release is valuable, so don't put an expectation on it. It needs to be like this, it needs to be like that. No. Having an honest self-inquiry and poking at the unconscious and just letting go of even little things. Again, that has a compound cumulative effect. It's like chipping away at the dam, or chipping away at that dam until it breaks, or just chipping away at something over time, then it just progressively goes away. It's always valuable no matter what. Okay, so let go of any expectation on the process that you might put onto it. All right, so primarily when it comes to releasing, we're going to be focusing on releasing the lower emotional states of consciousness, the lower states of consciousness, as they cause most of the limitation and suffering that we experience on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so most people, they will only release in order to feel good. So most people, when they're doing releasing or letting go, they feel really shitty. All right, and this is a gold tip, so really pay attention to this. They only release to feel good when they feel shit. So most people, they get to a breaking point, they do a little letting go, and then they kind of just like do the next self-help technique. What I recommend is release, get that sense of lightness or relief, feel better on an issue, then release more, then feel better, and then keep releasing and releasing and releasing. And what you'll find is that the higher states of consciousness that you go to, the more power you have to look and dig up the more intense aspects of the unconscious that are buried down there and face them. All right? So really, momentum is key with releasing. You want to get into a letting go or releasing momentum. And the more that you release the lower emotions, what will happen is you'll get into more higher consciousness states like courageousness, acceptance, peace, and you want to let go of clinging on to those as well. And the higher that you go up, what you'll find is you can look down and you can dig up more and more into your awareness. And again, I know this sounds abstract now, but the more you practice this, the more that you see, holy fuck, there's a lot of things in me that want to be let go of, and now that you have the power to do it, you can really dig down. You can go to those depths and confront some of your darkest feelings about yourself. Okay, so what I recommend is that you get into releasing momentum. All right, and you use those higher states of consciousness to go deeper with the practice of letting go, rather than kind of just doing it as like this one-off thing when you feel bad and you want to feel better. Okay, so lastly, to reiterate, each of these processes that we're about to go over, they simply are meant to bring up sensations. All right, they're simply meant to bring up the feelings inside the suppressed feelings. So there's no magic in these methods. The real core of them is to poke at the unconscious and to bring up certain sensations and feelings about yourself that are suppressed. All right, and for this reason, right, of wanting to target the sensations, we primarily target emotions because we know what an emotion feels like in the body. All right. We know what an emotion feels like. We know what fear feels like. We know what anger feels like. We kind of have a general idea. That's why it's useful to let go of emotions, because we can very quickly and accurately be like, yeah, I kind of know what that feels like. I kind of know what this feels like. And so you know what to look for. So it's useful, to let go of emotions, but emotions are just labels on sensations. All right. And remember, it is emotions, right? The sensations, the emotions that fuel your limiting beliefs in the first place. All right. And that's why when it comes to releasing, you don't have to go to the mind or to the intellect and think about your beliefs to let go of them. Because remember, it's the suppressed lower consciousness emotions that are fueling them in the first place, that are based in the ego. Right? So a belief is more of an intellectual construct. And the reason that, we focus primarily on emotions and whatnot is because, a belief is more of an abstract intellectual construct, and it's harder to feel than an emotion. All right. So it's you're less likely to say, a belief out loud and then feel something in the body when you say it than you are with an emotion. All right. And that's why it's useful to work on, emotions, and why we do this in releasing, because we can target them more easily. But with that being said, there are certain beliefs where we can read it aloud to ourselves, or we can just say it, and there is a lot of emotional charge behind that belief, in that case, you can apply the letting go technique to it. All right. So really the idea is that we're going after the suppressed feelings, sensations, and you can release on anything that brings up those sensations to you and offers them up to you. But the reason we go more for emotions is because they fuel the beliefs in the first place, and they're more easy to locate and define than beliefs are. Okay? But again, some beliefs are very emotionally charged, and you can let go on those too. You know? And when I say emotionally charged, I'm talking about the sensations. All right? So you can apply these specific different practices that I'm going to give you right now to specific goals, or you can just do them to your life in general. Because remember, releasing on any one thing, it has an effect across the board. All right? So now finally we're getting into the meat and potatoes. What are the different practices? All right? And I've got 5 written down for you that are really powerful, and that you can switch between these, okay? You can switch between these, but remember, persistence is key, okay? And keeping the principles that we just talked about in mind are key. So I hope you didn't just skip to this point, because the other shit really matters, okay? So practice number 1, and this is one of my favorites, especially when you're first getting into this. Have a conversation with your shadow. So in Jungian psychology, Carl Jung, he refers to this part of ourselves, to basically the part of ourselves that we really don't want to look at, the things that we're ashamed to admit about ourselves, that we really feel about ourselves. We call that the shadow. All right, it's the part of ourselves that we really don't like to acknowledge in our day-to-day life, but it's a part of ourselves that is there. Okay. And it's the part of ourselves that we just really don't like to look at. So what is this, having a conversation with the shadow? You're going to get out a piece of paper, and you're going to write down your pettiest thoughts about yourself. The pettiest, grossest thoughts that you have about yourself that you would normally be too afraid to admit, to acknowledge, or to say out loud. All right? Don't force yourself to talk shit about yourself or anything like that. Just see what comes up into your awareness. What do you really think about yourself when it comes to a specific thing, or just in general? What do you really think about yourself? All right? So be honest. It's an honest conversation, an acknowledgement of what is beneath the surface. All right? And so what you're going to do is you're going to write anything down that comes up, anything at all that comes up. Just make sure it's authentic and it's honest. You're not forcing any of this. And then you're going to look at the paper. You're going to read it to yourself silently. You're going to read what you wrote down silently. Really allow it to land what you're writing. Let yourself really reflect on what you're writing. And then you can read it aloud, so you can say it out loud. All right? Whatever some sensations come up, just allow them and welcome them fully, accept them fully, and allow them to run their course. Okay? And emotions, sensations, they can take a long time to run their course. They can take a little time, but just allow them to be there, because they do have a shelf life. All right? And you can keep acknowledging them and reading these things to yourselves and having this conversation with your shadow until you get a little bit of relief. All right? So that's practice number 1, have a conversation with your shadow. Very powerful practice, can poke at and bring up a lot that you didn't even know was there. All right? Practice number 2, picture the worst case scenario. So with any scenario in your life, this applies more to specific things, with any scenario in your life that you're experiencing resistance around, that you're having problems and internal conflict with, right? Or any goal that you're having a hard time attaining, or that you really want to attain, I want you to vividly picture the absolute worst case scenario when it comes to that thing. All right? So whatever that thing is that you care about, or you want to go well, or whatever that situation is that you have resistance around, I want you to imagine vividly in your mind, using all of the different 5 senses that you have, imagine the absolute worst case scenario happens. Okay? Like it really happens. Really imagine that it actually happened. It's not even a visualization. Like it actually happened. And then welcome whatever sensations come up into your awareness, and just keep welcoming them and replaying the image in your mind or the scenario in your mind, and keep allowing those sensations to come up until you feel relief. All right? So picture the worst case scenario when it comes to that thing that you really care about. So maybe there's a girl that you want to go approach, or maybe, there's this thing that you're afraid to do, or this business you're afraid to start, or maybe there's this conversation you're afraid to have. Picture the worst case scenario, vividly picture it and imagine it as if it were really happening, and allow the sensations to come up into your awareness. All right? And do that until you feel that sense of lightness or relief. All right? And again, it can be subtle or intense, but you'll know. All right? Practice number 3, identify apathy, grief, fear, lust or desire, anger, and pride. All right, these are the lower emotional states. So if you're having trouble taking action on a certain goal or doing a certain thing, or you're experiencing resistance, it boils down to one or multiple of these lower consciousness emotions that are creating the conflict in the first place. All right? So write down any issue that you'd like to release on, any topic, anything that you want to have, do, or be. And then I want you to ask yourself, and you can write this down, on the piece of paper. What are my now feelings about this? So when I write this down, or when I think about this thing that I'm trying to work on, or I'm experiencing resistance or inner turmoil around, write down, what are my now feelings about this? Pose the question to yourself on the piece of paper, and allow whatever comes up to be there honestly. Whatever feelings just naturally come up without you having to force anything. They can be subtle or intense. Whatever comes up, just allow it to come up and be there. All right? Just allow those feelings to be there. And then answer, okay? You're going to answer which emotion best describes this feeling. So you ask, what are my now feelings about this? And then you're going to answer that question that you wrote down with which emotion best describes this feeling. And then you're going to choose one of those lower consciousness emotions. Okay? So you're going to say, this feeling, I could best describe it as apathy. I could best describe it as anger. I could best describe it as grief. Or I could best describe it as lust or desire, craving, I could best describe it as pride. All right? Then what you're going to do is you're going to write down, and again, for me, I found that actually writing these questions down, like you're really having a dialogue with yourself on the paper, is useful. You're going to say, could I welcome X, whichever feeling? So could I welcome the apathy feeling? Could I welcome this anger? Could I welcome this pride? So you're going to welcome it fully. Don't resist the fact that you're feeling it. Welcome the feeling fully. All right? Completely welcome it. Then you're going to write down, could I accept this feeling and embrace it fully? All right? Could I accept it, embrace it fully? And then you're going to write down, and for both of these, you're going to write down yes or no. And whether you write yes or whether you write no, it doesn't matter. But answer honestly. Okay? Answer honestly. Could I accept it, embrace it fully? Could I welcome it fully? And you're going to really allow it, welcome it and accept it internally fully. You're going to allow it to be there, those sensations, those feelings. Okay? Let them be there. Let them wash over you, the feelings. Okay? And then you're going to write down, could I let go of wanting to feel this as best as I can? Or could I let go of wanting to feel this just a little bit? All right? And you're going to answer that honestly with yes or no. And again, whether or not you answer yes or no doesn't matter. But when you're honest with yourself, it brings up a lot. Just answering honestly, yes, no. It'll bring up a lot of sensations. Or it'll bring whatever needs to come up to the surface. All right? And what I like to do is if I answer no sometimes, I'll just start back at the top. Or you can ask yourself the question again. Again, there's no right way to do it, but I've just found that helps for me. Okay? Then you're going to ask, so you're going to say, could I let go of wanting to feel this as best I can, or as much as I can? So then you're going to ask yourself, would I? So the first one was, could I theoretically let go of it? Yes or no? Now you're going to write down, would I? So would you actually do it? Not could you, but would you actually do it? Answer yes or no. And again, do it honestly based on what you're feeling. And then the last question you're going to write down is when, with a question mark. You're going to say when. And then you'll go now. If you've really gotten to that point, honestly. And you'll release a little bit on it. Okay, I got this from the Sedona method. Very powerful. Okay, it's called the Sedona method. It's a method on letting go. All right, so write these questions down on the paper and then write down your answers. And each question, like I said, should be answered with extreme honesty. All right? And the whole point of the questions is not to reach some intellectual conclusion about anything. It's not to engage the thinking mind. It's just to the questions are just meant to offer up sensations. All right? And to offer you an opportunity to let go, because letting go is an inner decision that you make. All right? And again, even if you answer no, you'll often still experience a little bit of a release from even just answering no. You don't need to answer yes to have a release. Even sometimes if you say no, just by answering no honestly, you've now accepted the feeling, you've welcomed it, you've welcomed the fact that you're resisting it, and you've let some of it go. Okay? Now, keep cycling through the questions until you experience relief on that particular issue. All right? Keep cycling through the questions until you experience that relief. If you feel stuck at any point on any of the questions, you can write down, do I want to change how I feel about this? Right? In which you'll probably say yes. So maybe you say no to one of the questions, and then you'll ask yourself, do I want to change how I feel about this? You'll probably say yes, because you're trying to let go of it. And then you'll write down, could I welcome wanting to change this? Yes, I could welcome the fact that I want to change this. I really want to change how I feel about this. And then you're going to write down, could I let go of wanting to change this? Boom. All right. So you really want to release the resistance against the feeling of stuckness. All right. Anything that comes up, you just want to be with it, even if it's a feeling of wanting to push it away. All right. Repeat this process on each emotion surrounding your goal until you find relief. On apathy, pride, anger, whatever comes up, allow it to honestly come up, release on it, and you will let go of a shit ton. And again, these are the lower states of consciousness that fuel all of our problems. So targeting them specifically, whether it's just in general, what are my now feelings in this moment? It doesn't even have to be on a specific issue. Or you can do it on a specific issue. You'll let go of a lot in regards to that thing. Practice number 4. Recall a previous time you felt this way. All right? So with anything you're trying to let go of, you're going to ask yourself, what are your now feelings on the issue? So think of the issue, or maybe you're just feeling resistance in the moment. And you're going to get really honest with yourself about what your now feelings are. You're going to feel them in the body. Okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to pose the question to yourself, can I recall a previous time that I felt this way? All right? And then you're going to try to think of a previous time that maybe you felt the same thing that you're feeling in the moment. Can I call a previous time before that? Can I recall the first time that I felt this way? All right? And you don't need to recall the first time. You don't need to recall a previous time. But the point is that if you can kind of target a feeling that you're feeling in the moment, and you can kind of just cycle through the mind very briefly to see if there's any traumatic memories there which have a similar emotional charge, it can be useful to go back to them because they're often pretty intense as well, and they'll bring up even more of those similar feelings. And when you let go of more traumatic memories where these emotions got installed in the first place, these feelings got installed in the first place, you can clean up big issues in your life, very big issues in your life. So for example, I remember the Sedona method, which is where, it's not where this practice comes from, but it's where, Hale Dwoskin, who teaches the Sedona method, he talked about the fact that he basically, he had a bad relationship with his mom. His mom tried to psychoanalyze him all the time. And so when he got into releasing, he would only release from his head. He was very intellectual, a thinker. And when he was able to recall some of the feelings that he had with his mom, where his mom would try to psychoanalyze him and shit, what he said he said, I recalled those feelings of wanting to just be in my mind and to not feel anything because I didn't want to deal with my mom psychoanalyzing me. So I didn't want to feel anything. I had an aversion to feeling. And when he allowed that, when that popped back up into his awareness and he released on that and that relationship that he had with his mother and those feelings, he got so much more access to feeling in his body because he regained an acceptance of feeling things again. So recalling previous times where you felt similar to how you feel now on an issue where you have a resistance around it. Very powerful. Can bring up a lot. Okay, and again, you're not forcing yourself to bring anything up, but you can shift through these different practices to poke at the unconscious in different ways. Okay? Practice number 5, this is one of my favorites. This is the last one that we're going to go through in this video. Do nothing. Okay? So constantly throughout our day, whenever we feel any type of negative sensation whatsoever, what we do is, and this is totally, most of the time, this is totally unconscious, we instantly pull out our phone and we try to replace the feeling with dopamine. So a lot of us, especially if we're in self-improvement, you're like, no, I'm really into self-improvement. I take good care of myself. But look, bro, or look, girl, whoever's watching this, I bet you within milliseconds throughout your day, this probably happens dozens of times, if not hundreds of times, you feel negatively and then your mind starts to wander or think about something. Or you feel negatively in any way, shape, or form. It can be very subtle or intense, and you turn on the TV, or you open Instagram, or you open YouTube, and you go to look to find a better feeling elsewhere because you don't want to confront what's going on. So this practice is do nothing. Simply cut out all distraction for a few hours and just see what comes up. So come home, and instead of getting on your phone, instead of looking at the TV, instead of thinking about shit, literally just do nothing and just be totally open to whatever sensations come up and feelings come up and thoughts come up, whatever it may be. Whatever comes up, just allow it to come up, and just witness them. If certain thoughts come up, just allow them to be there. Don't get lost in the cyclical nature of the thoughts and start going down the mind, because again, letting go is not intellectual, but just witness the thoughts come up. Oh, you're a piece of shit. Oh, you're pathetic. Oh, you should be doing this right now. If those thoughts come up, just let them come up and just see what comes up, all right? And instead of burying your head in some distraction, allow whatever comes up to just be there and just accept and be there with those feelings fully, all right? And what I recommend is you actually get out a pen and pad and just write down whatever comes up. So it could be a ton of things that are random and unrelated might come up in these couple of hours that you do this. But what I found is that the most prevalent things that we can let go of are often the things that are closest to the surface of our conscious awareness because they're trying so hard to escape. So the moment that you can actually take letting go seriously and you can start to practice it over time, what you'll find is that things are just dying to be let go of. But we're constantly running from them, and we have developed this habit of running from them. But when you can totally just allow whatever comes up to come up with no specific goal in mind, a lot of the most relevant things to your life will just start popping up into your awareness to be let go of. Things that are dying to be let go of will just start to offer themselves up to you the more open you become. All right, so get out a pen and pad, do nothing for a couple hours, 0 distractions whatsoever, no cheating, like total fucking monk mode, and just write down whatever comes up. And again, they can be totally unrelated, but it doesn't matter because if they're coming up for a reason because they want to be let go of. So simply just be with them fully. Allow the sensations that come up in relation to the thoughts or the pictures or the images or just the feelings in general. Just allow whatever's there to be there. Don't label it. Don't judge it. Don't resist it. And just allow it to be there and to run its course. All right? So right there, those are 5 ways you can practice letting go. You can shift between them. I know they're a little abstract. I know this is a little abstract. Letting go is not something that you watch a video about and then you just get. Practice it. Be persistent with it. All right, dissolve your resistance towards the technique, and you will see the results. It has to be experienced firsthand. All right, extremely fucking powerful, life-changing, and something that will literally change you forever. You won't be the same after implementing this practice and making it part of your daily life. Okay, and I was very, very happy to be able to actually sit down and finally record this video because I talk about this, idea of release work in so many of my videos. So here you have a great introduction, a solid introduction. What is it? How do you do it? What are some ways that you can go about it? Everything you need to know in this one video right here. I will be offering coaching on this, one-on-one support with this, where we can let go of your most prevalent issues. All right, when it comes to, I like to talk about dating and attraction, but when it just comes to anything in your life in general, issues that have been plaguing you for a long time and have been fucking you up and creating internal conflict for a long time. This is my passion. This is what I'm really interested in. This is the real work, the deep work, the inner work that most of us just don't want to do or don't have the courage to do. All right, but that's what this channel is all about. So with that being said, this was a longer one. I want to thank you so much for being here tonight. It has been my pleasure to share this information with you. Don't take my word for any of this shit. Apply it, get the results yourself. And if you like the results, you want more help with it, come to me. Get that one-on-one coaching if you want to expedite the process. I'd love to help you with it if you want it. But like I said, there's no strings attached with this video. You can start getting incredible results just by doing what we've talked about here today, okay? So thank you so much for being here. And as always, I will see you in the next video.